Hey there, welcome back to Leadership Portraits. Today I'm going to be chatting with Lauren Fox. She is an Atlanta based project management pro, and she has spent over a decade leading teams and figuring out what real world leadership actually looks like. Lauren's journey is so relatable. She didn't plan on becoming a project manager, very few of us do. But she discovered she had a natural talent for organizing chaos, supporting people, and keeping everything moving. What I love most about this conversation is how honest she is about the ups and the downs, the learning curves, the tough seasons, the boundaries, and the moment she realized she had to build her own leadership style. We also talk about giving ourselves more grace, trusting our instincts, and growing into confidence one step at a time. It's a real conversation. It's warm and it's full of those, oh wow, me too moments. So I really think you'll enjoy the conversation and I'm excited to share it with you. So let's dive in. Um, Tell the audience just a little bit about you.
Sure. So I'm Lauren Fox. I am a native of Atlanta. I have been for the majority of my work based in Atlanta and doing project management. So I've been over project management teams for right around the last 12 years. And have gotten an opportunity to try to expand a little bit this year and expand into writing some and diving into just a little bit more of what leadership looks like, which has been really exciting. But that is that's been a lot of my work history.
I love project management, so I don't always get to talk to people that have that expertise. And to be fair, a lot of people have some expertise in project management but for someone who like does it day in and day out, that's something I've done for many years, and it's a little bit of a passion of mine. So I love having conversations about that. So tell me a little bit about what you maybe some of the things that you have done that have really kind of driven you down this path. I mean, how did you end up taking that path? Because I very rarely run into someone who says like in college or when they're a little kid, I want to be a project manager one day. So how did
Definitely not.
yeah, yeah,
I'm definitely the latter category.
yeah.
So like I'm sure many people, I fell into it. And as I think about it sometimes, I'm like, wow, maybe it is a love-hate relationship because it's one of those things that I know naturally I do well at and I thrive in that arena. And if I wasn't in that arena, I would probably be stepping over into it more than I should, and people would say, get back in your sandbox. So it's something that's a skill, but also at the same time, it's one of those things that never ends. I will talk to people and say, well, I, I don't think I've ever worked a day in this job where every task was done. There's always something to get ahead of. There's the next project you could start on. There's the next week stuff you could get started on. There is truly always something to be done. It's not something that you're going to button up at the end of the day and fold up nicely and say, okay, we'll start again brand new and fresh tomorrow. It is always evolving and something you're always doing. So that's where I think some of the hate part might come in, where you're just like, oh my goodness, we always have something we could be doing. Um, but also, I mean, I really luckily kind of fell into it. I was a couple years out of college, and my very first job that I got out of college was actually in HR. So I was doing HR for a staffing company. I noticed about 3 months in probably that it wasn't for me, but I had committed at that point to living in Atlanta and being able to pay for an apartment and all of these things that I was determined to do. So I was like, okay, well, I cannot leave here until I find something else. So I looked for quite a while. I actually had a friend that had worked with a recruiter and put me in touch with her. She was fantastic. And I interviewed at a few different places. And really at that point was just thinking, I'm kind of shell-shocked being in the work world. I have been in school all this time. I now am supposed to be somewhere 40 hours a week. And I have no clue what I want to be doing, but I just know that wherever I am those 40 hours a week, it's such a huge chunk in my life. I want to like what I'm doing and I want to like the people I'm around. I want to be in a great environment of good people and enjoying myself throughout the day. And that was the only direction I really had. So when I stumbled upon my job, which at that point in time was an implementations coordinator, I went in and I met everyone and I met the lady who was going to be training me, who'd been the only one doing the job up until then. And I clicked with her. We were talking about things and I was like, when a client calls, normally I'm looking up our last interaction, like what was the last message we sent to each other or where we left off, you know, just really jived on our styles. And met the owners. They seemed great. They seemed very laid back. They brought their dog into the office every day. And so I just thought, okay, I don't really know what direction I'm going, but I feel like this could be a good environment to be in 40 hours a week. So I started out there, and that was 12 years ago.
Isn't it interesting how the environment that you're in can make so many other things better? If you're in a great, or it can make it better, it can make it worse. If you're in a
Yes,
great environment,
100%.
yeah, if you're in a great environment where people really care about one another, and I'm not talking about those that say we're all family, because I think sometimes there's a little bit of
Toxicity
manipulation.
in that.
Yes,
Yes,
with
it
that.
can be. It can be.
But where you really feel like people are supportive versus the opposite of that, it can make such a huge difference, and it can make you make decisions differently.
100%.
Mhm.
And I will say that's for the good and the bad.
Yeah,
You hear things all the time of, if you want to make the most amount of money, you should change jobs this so often. Or if you want to
right.
be able to have this, you should do such and such. So there's so many opinions out there, and there's so many snippets of advice of what's the best thing to do for you. And for everybody, that's so different. It's so different. And it's probably taken me a long time to realize that what's right for me this year might be different than what's right for me
Yeah,
next year. And what's right for me right now or within my family dynamic right now could change. And um so I knew when I was jumping in, I was thinking for right now, this is the most important. Now, it worked out wonderfully. I had great bosses that were incredibly supportive of growth. Now, it doesn't mean that it was not very sink or swim, and that there were not hard
right.
times and that, you're not able to put some rose-colored glasses over there. Um, but it was incredibly hard. It was probably the hardest work I'd ever done, but I felt appreciated and I felt supported and I felt like I was giving the opportunity to grow and people had faith in me. And at that point in time, that was so huge. And
Yeah,
and that's what I needed in order to see, okay, what can I really do?
yeah,
What absolutely like what can I really make of all of this? So um I mean, regardless, I would say there are people now that have been there with me that entire 12 years that are, have
nice.
been there on the hard days, or that you can call up and say, hey, I really need a rush on this. Like, can you help me out? And they do. You have those relationships that you build where people are willing to do everything that they can because they know on a daily basis you're trying to make their life as easy as possible. You're trying to pull your weight and steer in the ship, and are happy to do that for you. So I would say that's probably when I think about my job, and I've been asked at different times, what's your favorite part of your job? And I would say, honestly, my team. Right now, like it's my team, because no matter what kind of craziness is going on, we're able to kind of just shrink into our world know what we do, how we do it, how we handle it, that we have processes for it, and support each other and get it done. So that's one of the things that I get to kind of be a part of every single day, and I get to lean into every day, is that group of people who hold themselves accountable and each other and support each other and know it's hard work, but are trying to do the best that they can.
You know, that relationship piece that you were just talking about, that is such an important piece, and it can be challenging. So you mentioned that, people talk about, if you want to make more money, you have to jump jobs every so often. But that relationship piece gets affected by that, because every time you go into a new environment, you now have to build on your relationships. And that in and of itself can be challenging as well. So there's something to be said. I am a big proponent of don't stay with a job just for the sake of staying with a job. However, there are benefits, on both sides of it.
100%.
Mhm.
And I think everybody's makeup is a little bit different. You know, there are
Yes,
some people
absolutely.
who need to stay moving and need to stay changing, to stay interested and things like that. One of the things that I think that was naturally sort of already a part of the job for me was how much we did change. You know,
Mhm.
we were run by two entrepreneurs that constantly were thinking, what can we do next? What's the next thing? What can we do? And so in my role, I wasn't as much in an older corporation that was thinking, well, this is the way we've already always done it, or things like that. Not
Mhm.
at all the environment. Very,
Good.
very changed. Let's fix what needs to be fixed. Let's adapt where we need to. Let's keep ourselves competitive environment. So for me, it it did feel like things were always growing and changing and becoming a little bit different. So I feel like very little opportunities to get bored or stagnant.
That's awesome. And I have found that that's a little bit of the nature of project management, program management and that's one of the reasons I've always been kind of drawn to it, is things are moving all the time. And one of the things I always enjoyed was the fact that I had so many different things going on at any one time, that I could move back and forth, even if it's not multiple projects happening. It may be multiple work streams in a larger project, or multiple people that you have to work with. And that's, to me, that is something that's very appealing with that kind of role.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even today, and I don't get to work on as many projects today because I'm more so managing a team and layers throughout a team and
Yeah.
processes for that whole team. So I'm not as customer facing these days as I once upon a time was. But even in my day to day, sometimes I'm like, okay, I'm going to do two tasks from this area, then I'll jump. I'm going to do three tasks over from this area that needs my attention. And then I really need to do two tasks over from this area. And then we're going to start all over again because they
Right.
all need my attention today. And we're going to take bits and pieces from each of them. And then we're going to change gears. We're going to jump to another task. So that is still a part in so many ways of the day to day. But even, back when I was heavily in projects, one of the things that I loved the most was that because in my particular line of work, we work directly with doctors, with dentists. We every day, even though I'm sitting behind a computer, you're calling people, you're talking to new people, you're figuring
Mhm.
out what's going on with them, what their needs are, what they are looking for. And even sometimes they're just calling you because they are freaking out and don't know what to do next or how to
Right.
take the next step. So there was so much what felt like, interpersonal communication on a daily basis. I didn't ever feel like I was sitting behind a screen or just
Right.
sitting in an office, behind data sheets or something like that. There was so much more going on with that and so much more interaction, that I think kept it very engaging and very personal.
Yeah. Yeah. So how have you how have you felt like your progression has happened into leadership? I know that when we start out in our careers, we don't feel, a lot of us don't necessarily feel like we're leaders. And so in a lot of cases, it's really kind of a progression into that. So how do you feel like you've sort of made those steps into, becoming a leader?
Ah, gosh, it's kind of strange because it it feels like such extremes all at the same time. I think that naturally, just by instinct, I somehow end up stepping into leadership roles just in life.
Yeah.
It's taken me a long time to realize that I have to work really hard to not. And I'll tell you just a short story that kind of reflects that a little bit. I, for a little while, was in a small group. And I was really going through the phase where I was like, Lauren, you've got a lot going on at work. You've got a lot going on personally. You cannot be in charge of anything else. So when you go into this group, you're not going to be the leader. And I said, the strategy is going to be for the first three meetings, you're not going to speak unless you're spoken to. You're going to give short answers. You're not going to elaborate. We're not doing anything like that. We are holding it all back. And somehow, even though I did all of that, they tried to get me to be a co-leader with someone else. And I was like, no, how is this happening? Like this one time I'm shutting it down. I'm not going to be in charge of things. Um, but I think that just speaks to the nature of how sometimes you just intrinsically step into certain
Yeah.
roles, or you ask certain questions, or you are a fact finder, or you are so results focused in your mind that people are like, oh, well, this person has these ideas, maybe they should just be in charge. So I think that's a little bit of how my leadership journey worked a little bit. I
Yeah.
mean, some of it was by chance. I started out doing this implementations role, and the girl who trained me was there for my first 4 weeks of training and then moved on. So I was doing it by myself. No one had ever done it but her for the last 3 years. So I was doing it solo. And then they were like, wow, we brought you on as a second person. This was really two people's load. So they started looking for somebody else. I had to train them while I was doing it. Then the team got larger, it got larger. And it was just sort of something where people would come to me and they'd be like, do you know this? Do you know this? Well, I either did or I would go try to find it, you know? And
Yeah.
then at one point, people were like, well, you're really already our team lead. Do you think they're just going to make you that eventually? And they did. And then it evolved to the next and to the next and to the next. So it's one of those things where it's it's been a blessing in a lot of different ways of having the opportunity and having the chance and having the want for growth. And, also I'm at a certain place career wise where also I'm being super reflective and figuring out what's next.
Yeah.
So, is what's next, leadership? Is it more self-focus? Is it leading at a different level? Is it, there's so many different things after you've been doing something for a while of just checking in and saying, how does this fit and how is this working? And what am I able to give to my team? And am I able to give them the best and show up the best version of myself? And what does next look like in this phase of life? So
Yeah.
it's many of it has been by chance. Some of it's been through inquisitiveness and hard work and wanting to know and wanting to understand and trying to find patterns and results. And it all kind of just flowed together that way.
Nice. Yeah. It's so interesting how we progress into, we learn new things. We attach ourselves to people who help us to learn. And then all of a sudden you look around, you're like, okay, people are looking to me to to make decisions and do all the things. And so, in a lot of cases, and it's very similar to how it kind of happened for me. You just look up one day and I'm like, oh, okay, that's what this is.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think that's probably where my journey with trying to navigate boundaries in the workplace and
Yeah.
having to figure that out came from because I worked in the office for 5 years, and for a long time it was kind of a running joke that everybody had was that, well, there's always a line outside Lauren's door. Like
Yeah.
people literally wait in a line to ask her questions. Sometimes the questions didn't even have anything to do with me. They were for another department. Someone else could have answered them, but they're like, well, she'll find it out or answer our questions. So that's where I'm going to go. And it took me a while to realize, whoa, this is really kind of taking a toll.
Yeah.
And it is funny in some ways, but in other ways, I'm not setting some really good boundaries here. And I
Yeah.
need to figure that out because I do care about all these people and I want them to get their questions answered and I want them to get help. But there has to be enough of me to go around really supporting my team and doing my job for that to be the case.
Tell me about a time that you felt like really challenged, or there was kind of a tough time that you had, whether it's with people or a project or anything like that, and how you kind of addressed it.
Yeah, I would say one of my probably most difficult times. And I think this is probably one of the first times I realized that I was going to have to find a leadership style and really cultivate it myself, and that it wasn't just a singular thing to be a leader. And that was when, goodness, I probably couldn't tell you the year or how long I'd been doing it, but I was managing over the installation team. And we had a lot of different strong personalities, which in all fairness, we it's a very difficult job. We have a lot of very type A people, and that's a lot of leaders in one group. And we were just in an extremely difficult place with the team. We had a lot of people that were very unhappy. We had a lot of people that didn't get along. We had a lot of people that didn't feel happy with me. And I was just sort of gobsmacked. I was in a place where I thought, I'm trying so hard and my intentions are good. And I don't understand why communication isn't happening the way I think it is, or why everyone is so unhappy. And it took a big pivot to understand that it was something that I couldn't do completely by myself. I couldn't figure out completely by myself. And that was going to take some changes. And just because I was trying my hardest and just because I wanted the best for everybody didn't mean that that was going to be what they received or that it was necessarily what they needed. So that was really a big turning point for me. And it was a point where I had to do a lot of listening because it didn't really matter what I thought the narrative was. And it also didn't matter what I could witness and see with my own eyes.
Yeah.
People needed to be heard. Didn't need me to assess it for myself. They needed to be heard and they needed me to create an understanding with them and be able to kind of restart from there. So it was difficult, and I would say it was probably within about a year and a half to 2 years from there. We had a consultant come in and start working with us and working on some structure for the department and outfitting things and stuff like that, which we needed desperately. And I was such a young leader, I didn't have the visibility to understand that we needed that desperately and that that type of structure would probably help our team tremendously. because then everybody wouldn't just be living in the Wild West. So that was a really hard time. But I think it was super important to live through because it showed me I might have to show accountability to our leadership. I might have to hold them accountable that if we make this decision, it's going to be visible. If we make this decision, it's going to impact others in this way. If we make this decision, it's going to impact morale this way. And I had to detach myself a little bit from being a team with them and be incredibly independent from there because otherwise it was very easy. We were still a very small company to be like, well, mom said no, but I'm gonna ask dad,
Yeah.
like, or things like that. I was like, okay, I've got to have a healthiness in this team for myself and for them. And that, it might be frustrating, but if our owner says one thing, we're gonna go with that. And they're gonna have to be held accountable to that. So it was definitely it was so multi-layered, but it was learning about emotional maturity for myself and for people who are new to the workforce, for in their first professional job, and learning about structure from a small company to a larger size company, and learning about, job roles and responsibilities and growth patterns and options for people to retain tenure and things like that, where my day to day at that point was like, let's just put out fires. There's fires everywhere. Let's just try to put out everybody's fires and maybe that'll be enough. So I would say that was an incredibly challenging time because it took a little bit of time for me to also not take it personally and
Oh,
and
yes.
realize that I wasn't, you know, I everything wasn't broken because I was failing, but maybe we needed structure. Maybe we'd outgrown what worked before, and that all of those things could be true. And we all were learning and growing throughout it. So I think that was probably one of the most humbling times and the biggest learning opportunities for me to figure out, okay, what do I need to do differently? But also, what do I need to know and expect and ask for from this system, from this
Yeah.
business, because it's fair for them to ask for it too.
And that sounds like that was a challenge, but it was a really key learning opportunity for you as well.
100%.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things that's hard to look back on. Like, you don't ever like to look back on something and think, oh man, people didn't like me, or I was not, or I couldn't make everybody happy, or things like that. And I think that that's the thing is, I was working from a place as a leader, as a people pleaser, and you can't survive that for the most
Yeah.
part. Somebody might be able to. I was not. And I was like, you know what? We've got to have structure, we've got to have fairness, we've got to have expectations. I'm not always going to be able to make everybody happy, but I can be kind through clarity and through clear
Right.
expectations and through also communicating what my limits are. And that's going to be much more professional than me trying to make everybody happy. And
Yeah.
it was a huge learning opportunity because it made me have to shift what my baseline was going to be.
Yeah. One of the things that I have learned over the years, and I say this a lot of times, is number one, you do have to give people a little bit of grace. Number two, if they've not seen it, if they've not experienced it, you can't expect them to know it. So sometimes, and we have to give ourselves a little bit of grace too. If you've not experienced that yet, it's you can't know it. So, that's where the learning comes in. And but we have to be a little bit nice to ourselves when we're going through those because, and understand that no, I wouldn't have known this by now because I just haven't gone through it yet.
100%, 100%. And I think it's one of those things too that even as I go through the weeks or I go through the days, it's a good reminder to have because sometimes you do have to have a threshold or a tolerance for somebody getting frustrated with you, or for somebody
Right.
being annoyed about something, or for somebody feeling a certain way. That's just the nature. And I tell myself, my my boss, who was my boss for over 10 years, I used to tell myself all the time, I was like, I'm never going to have a boss as good as him. So I better just get used to that now and be prepared. It's downhill from here. But he annoyed me regularly. And he knows it. And I was able to tell him, I was like, you're driving me bonkers right now. And I was like, Lauren, that's true for everybody. You are never going to be in a place that you don't annoy someone, that somebody doesn't notice habits about you. I mean, one of my team's favorite things to say is they'll tell me something and I'll be like, what happened? No, I'm going to rectify this. And then they'll be like, oh, Lauren's angry typing. We can hear it. She's typing hard. And I was like, well, they should have never said that to you, and they could hear me type. They were like, you type different when you get mad. We work remotely and they still know that about me, that when I'm
Right.
angry, I type differently. So these are the things that, people that have to work with you on a daily basis, they know and they learn. And so I've had to develop my threshold for sometimes I'm going to have to be the one that's the bearer of bad news, or I'm going to have to say something that is the best for both of our departments, or those types of decisions. And I'm still going to try to offer room for my team to be frustrated and that be okay. Like they can be. I'm frustrated regularly. And, I think one of the things that I that I am proudest of is there are times where we'll have a meeting and we may have a team meeting and and it's a rough week and some of my team leads are telling me things that are really difficult and they'll say, Lauren, I know some of the stuff that we're saying you can't do anything about, but it's really hard that we're struggling through this.
Yeah.
And we're not expecting you to go, chisel a mountain out of this and make something new for us, but it's really hard and we need a space that we can say it.
Yeah.
And so I think that I am proud that they feel like they can come to me with that
Yeah.
and that we can have that space and that we're going to do our best to keep it professional and and to keep it on track, because I don't want their days to to divulge into nothing but frustrations, but at the same time they're allowed to be frustrated. We all are.
Yeah.
And they're allowed to feel that. And if I can take one little piece of it away from it that I can go work on to make it even a fraction better, even if it's not the whole point, I'm going to try to do that for them because they work incredibly hard and they deserve it. I'm there to be their support. I'm not there to tell them what to do. I'm there to just make it so that they can do what they do so well.
So when you, as you have kind of built your leadership skills, what are some of the things that you have discovered have been the most the most helpful skills for yourself, or where do you, if you were giving advice to someone and you were saying, okay, these are the skills you need to build, what would they be? What do you see as some of the most important skills from a leadership perspective?
I think that you need to try to be as best as you can an unbiased listener.
Oh
And
yeah.
and by that I mean even if the feedback is frustration, even if the feedback is irritation with a system, with yourself, with whatever, if they feel like they can be honest with you, I think that that's probably one of the most important things. I think, especially as you go higher up in your business or you're leading a business, if people aren't comfortable telling you the problems or don't feel like that they can, you're really never going to see what's broken in your system.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to be a listener without um, self reaction or self
Right.
judgment. Even if it's a little uncomfortable, you got to sit with it. I think that that's a huge thing, and I think you need to also learn your people. Like that part's huge because a big piece of what's important to me is fairness and fairness with people. And for a long time, I think I felt that it meant everybody got the exact same thing. And sometimes it's about everybody getting the thing that they need. I might have
Yes.
somebody that really just needs interaction with me during the week. They need to feel connected. They need to check in. They need to feel secure. That's what they need. I have somebody else that just wants to know when our bonus is going to get paid out and what it's going to be and what they can expect. I've got somebody else that's like, I don't have a ton of time. Can you just give me short, straight answers? Everybody, or somebody else is like, my PTO and that being sacred is the most important thing to me. Everybody's is different. And I think that that was a big learning journey for me, is making sure that fairness can sometimes be giving each person what they need, even if it looks a little bit different, because you don't manage everybody exactly the same.
Right.
And everybody shows up as different humans with different needs. And most everybody, I should know this by now because I think I've said it a lot of times this year. I'm like, I feel like for most people, they want to know what their job is and what they need to do to be successful. They want to get paid, and they want to be appreciated, and then they want to be left alone for the most part.
Right. Yes.
And I think if you can do those things for the most part, you're going to have decently happy people. And I think if you're falling down in one of those areas, then you really need to be able to look at it.
Yeah.
And the appreciation piece, I think, is where everybody's a little bit different. Like pay scales, they need to be fair. Work expectations, they need to be super clear. Those are pretty across the board. You know, some people want to be left alone a little bit more than others. But then, in the appreciation, that's where things get a little bit more individual and everybody's human.
Yeah.
So I think that those are so important. And I think it takes us all just tuning in a little bit more to ourselves and reminding ourselves, what do we want? What do we want? You know, do we want to not be thinking about work at 9 o'clock because we were able to get our load done of
Yeah.
what needed to be done in the day? Do we want to be able to, take our PTO and turn our brain off? Do we want to be able to have reasonable bonuses that we know how to hit, or whatever it may be? For
Right.
all of us, it's generally, for the most part, the same. And I think if we can shoot to achieve that and take some of the puzzle work out of it, then people are going to be able to do what they need to do and thrive.
Yes. Absolutely. And part of that is a little bit of situational leadership. And there have been a lot of studies over the years about how to reward employees and how to show appreciation for employees. And most organizations have their benefits, and how they define how they the stuff on top of your salary that you get as being an employee. If you can crack the code of how to individualize it, it's so much more powerful to people. And I know it's a hard thing to do, but as leaders, that's one of the things. If we can't do that as organizations, we can do those little things as leaders to um,
Yeah,
help our
absolutely.
people feel like individuals.
100%. And I think that so many people are looking for a little bit of autonomy, and
Yeah.
also an appreciation that they are adults. And I can
Yes.
only speak for my own experience. I know people lead different larger groups, people at different levels, all that different stuff. Everybody's situation is going to be different. But, I am in a scenario where I don't want to nickel and dime my team about doctor's appointments or
Right.
whatever. For the most part, my team's incredibly hardworking. And there are going to be times where I tell them, like, I've got this, you're good, shut it down at this time, and we're going to go from there. And it just feels so, I even know for myself as a person, it feels so depleting for somebody to be like, oh, are you going to do this? Are you going to do, to just nickel and dime all these hours when you go above and beyond.
Right.
And that's one of the things, the majority of my team works from home. And well, my whole team, I don't know why I said majority. But they work from home, and it's been one of those things that at different times over the years, people have said, well, are we sure they're working? Are we sure they're doing this? Are
Hmm.
we sure? And I'm like,
That's the
guys,
big question right now, right?
yeah.
That's that
And
all
I'm
the
like, guys,
companies are asking that question.
we're
Mhm.
executing projects here.
Yeah,
I was like, money doesn't come in if we're not doing what we're supposed to do.
right,
It's very visible, very fast. Now, not everybody's department might be that way, and not everybody's job might be that way. But I'm like, it's very visible, very fast if people on my team aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. So I don't have concerns. And the other thing, though, is if people need to be babysat to that level, they're probably not performers on the level of our team
right,
that we're looking for. So
right,
I'm like, let's treat people like adults. Let's make it so that if they have a 8:30 a.m. dentist appointment that's 1 mile down the road from their house, that's a whole lot easier than having to commute 2 hours after they go to the dentist or something like that.
right.
I'm like, I I just it's I've got such a variety of people on my team, and I'm like, women especially out here in the world are multitasking their lives away. I'm
Right.
like, I know that these grown people are juggling so much in their lives that they can juggle these projects.
Yeah.
They're very good at it. They're able to execute it. They're able to manage their time. I believe in them, and and the results show it. So other than that, I don't think they need to be babysat. And I think you're going to be very disappointed by the layer of work that you get for people that you spend a lot of energy babysitting.
Totally agree. Yeah, totally agree. So, what, from a leadership perspective or just a life perspective, if you were talking to yourself, like a 25-year-old you, um, what advice would you give yourself?
Oh, geez. Probably go to therapy. I'd probably tell her that. Get there sooner. Um, get there sooner to be less hard on yourself. Um, I mean, for me, a lot of what I have learned has been a personal and professional journey. And so much of it has mimicked and paralleled itself in similar struggles, whether it's, you know, boundaries, allowing yourself to not put yourself last, understanding so many different things, not being as hard on yourself. Um, so many things that have had to been worked on in multiple areas. So I would say 25-year-old me was probably really stubborn, probably as stubborn as 37-year-old me is, and probably wouldn't have listened and would have had to walk through the fires. So, but I think if the biggest thing that I could say to myself is you're walking around in your body all day long. You don't have to be the meanest person to yourself out there.
That is great advice.
I think that's truly it because I would say all the lessons that I needed to learn, I don't think I would give back. And I think I would still need to learn those. But I would say the biggest difference that exists today, that existed versus my 25-year-old self, is the way that I'm willing to treat my own self.
Mm, that's fantastic.
Because it's really horrible to walk around in your head all day with
Yeah.
somebody that's not nice to you.
Yes.
That's the worst.
I think
So
that's great
if
advice for anyone.
yeah, so if you've got to walk around with yourself all day, be nicer to her. But also, it's really good, I think, in the leadership context to allow other people to witness you giving yourself grace
Mm,
and
yes.
not giving yourself a free pass and not holding yourself accountable, but just giving yourself grace of I did this and I was kind of embarrassed by it, or I did this and I was really nervous, or I did this and I gave it my best shot. Just
Yeah.
allowing yourself to be human and to give yourself grace, I think does wonders for also your relationship with others, for being relatable, for people feeling
Absolutely.
comfortable talking to you, for people feeling comfortable allowing themselves to do that. Um, and I really do think that in life and mimicking in work as well, that would be the biggest thing.
Nice. Nice. I love that. That is such great advice. And more so I'm a little older than you. My generation are more of the, I guess pull yourself up by your bootstraps and don't talk about personal stuff. And therapy is not something that a lot of us do. Some, but I have spoken to more people like closer to your age recently, and almost all of them talk about therapy and talk about therapy before you need therapy. And
Yeah.
it's 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 interesting to me, and when I observe these people, I can I can see a difference and how they build relationships and how they um you know react with the world. um so yeah, I mean, I think that is phenomenal advice.
Well, and it's something too that I mean, I will say um that I mean, it's something that I don't take for granted that can be a luxury. It can
Yeah,
be a luxury in regards to time, it can be a luxury in regards to money, it can be a luxury in regards to a lot of things. I personally am someone who has struggled badly with anxiety. And for me, I was like, okay, I got to do something about this.
yeah,
This is affecting my life, my health. Like I need to do something. Now, could I have stopped a long time ago? Definitely. I could have, but it's been something that for me has allowed me to uh, reflect, to try to understand, to try to figure out ways that I might put blocks in front of myself, or that I'm maybe not being totally fair to myself, or holding myself back in some arenas. And in some ways, it truly just helps me tap in to figure out the right decision for me. Um, I mean, and it is something that I would say if anybody is able and interested, I would highly suggest for them. And I hope it can be a really positive thing because for a lot of people, I think they're just trying to figure things out and
yeah,
trying to make themselves better and trying to make themselves better in relationships, better in interactions, better in everything. And I think for me, it has helped me be more confident in my own self and as a leader. And also it's one of those things where you're right. I mean, there's always that line you're dancing with, keep things professional or keep things in or don't share too much. But I will say that I think something that I love within my team is that also people have felt a safe enough space. I'm like, hey, you guys do anything that is, workable for you, but I haven't been afraid to share things that I've needed. Or
right.
like, yeah, I probably really need to talk about that in therapy, or I worked on some, or sometimes people say, oh, that was really good advice. And I'll say, that wasn't from me, that was from my therapist. Like I didn't learn that on my own. And I think it's funny if you're willing to talk about it, because I will say I was a little nervous and there's a little bit of stigma when I first started going. But if you're willing to talk about it and open the door just a little bit of like, hey, like, I think this is a cool thing and it's been really good for me, and you take it however
Yeah,
you feel about it. Other people are more comfortable asking, probing, talking about it too, seeing what
right.
your experience has been. It opens that door just a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. That's fantastic advice. So, thank you so much for being here. This has
Sure.
been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed it. I've really learned a lot from you, and I know the readers or the listeners, have as well. Before we wrap up, though, I have one more thing. So what's next for you? What's new for you? Anything, anything going on that's exciting or fresh?
Well, I Honestly, this year, right this moment is, and I think I touched on it a little bit before. This year's super reflective for me. I am really trying to figure out what is next for me, just career wise, future wise, growth wise. Being able to be a part of the Leadership Voices book has been something that's been kind of outside my comfort zone this last year, and I'm extremely excited about it, but it also has made me push myself a little bit. And so far this year, I've gotten a chance work-wise to go on a couple of trips. And I'm also a little bit leaning into you know, my own confidence of, you know what, I think I want to ask to go on this, or I'm interested in this. I'm going to say I want to be included in part of this, or things like that. So I am trying to expand a little bit this year, expand outside my comfort zone, take meetings with people that I normally wouldn't and meet with people that I normally wouldn't, because you think, well, I don't want to waste their time, or well, I don't know if this will go anywhere, or things like that, and just give more things a little bit of a chance. So that's actually what I've been doing a lot of so far this year. And I'm excited that I think there might be some more in the next few months.
That is fantastic. I love that. I love the
Yeah.
fact that you're kind of pushing yourself a little bit. And I mean, and anything that you do like that is pushing you, even if it's like super uncomfortable, it's making you a better leader. It's helping you to learn
100%.
more that you can then help your team or anyone else.
Yeah, it is. I will say that there has been so much learned, whether it is from other women in leadership, whether it is from therapy, whether it is from group interactions or things like that. There's so many things that I think I have learned and take with me each step of the way that I wouldn't have completely gotten to by myself, but that I'm able to carry along. And I think that's one of the things I'm opening myself up the most to this year as well, of just that combined um, experience of women navigating in the workplace, in leadership, in communal spaces, helping each other and helping each other grow
Right,
and learning from each other, because
right.
some of us feel like we're not getting it right, or feel some imposter syndrome, or are navigating the same things. And I think I'm trying to surround myself with the support and the groups and the learning, opportunities more than ever this year.
That is so important. Yeah.
Yes.
What is it they say? You're only as strong as your network, or it's something like that. But your network of people that you surround yourself with is so critical, especially when you're in a growth season.
Absolutely. And it's also felt a little bit like, I think for a long time I thought networking was salesy. And I
Yes.
I I see myself as so not a salesperson.
Mm,
So doing that felt weird, and it felt unnatural, and it felt like something I wouldn't know how to do. And and sometimes it felt like it would be disingenuous, and that
right.
was the thing I struggled with the most. So I feel like this year I am able to connect in a way of networking, in a way that feels genuine, and it
Yeah.
feels like real connections and real people just helping each other navigate and figure things
Yeah.
out. And that feels like one of the most exciting things, because it felt like something I didn't fully understand before. I was like, well, I'm not a salesperson, I wouldn't do that. But I've been able to make some real genuine connections, and it's been something that it's like, of course, why wouldn't I help somebody looking to do this or looking to do this? And being able to create some connections that way that have felt really exciting, and feel like there's very good opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love it. Well, good luck on that journey, and I am looking
Thank
forward
you.
to continuing to follow you and see, the great things that are coming.
Well,
this
thank you
year
so much for
and later. Yeah.
No, I appreciate so much you having me. This has been a lot of fun. Sometimes you just don't realize what a long journey it's been until you start
Right.
talking about it.
Start
So
talking about
I
it. Exactly.
appreciate it so much, and it's been a lot of fun.
All right. Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, to the listeners, thank you for listening, and join us for this podcast and more in the future.